Awakening to the truth. The collapse of third density. Welcome to Awakening to the Truth. Awakening to the Truth.
The Patal, who are 11th density, created physicality of third density. Now this was done millions of years ago. We know that humanity itself has been around a lot longer than history tells us. So if we shift into fifth density, this could have an effect on them to shift to a higher density, and possibly other races of ETs will move up to a higher density. If the Patal move up to a higher density, they won't be here to project third density. This is a theory of a few researchers. Now it's believed that the Patal were at fifth density when they created third density here. Now the Patal are Cedars. I know there's been arguments at the minute on the internet between people and groups about the names. The Cedars, Intergalactic Federation, the founders. The thing is, they're all the same. They're all the same. It's no different to us here now naming like the deep state, the cabal, the Illuminati, the New World Order. They're all the same. And it's crazy that people are arguing over a name of a race of beings. It's just creating division. And we shouldn't be divided at the minute. Humanity needs to come together. So the argument needs to stop. Now, the Patal Cedars, they created some of the bloodlines here on Earth, as well as other ETs within our solar system. And as you know, all of humanity have 24 different races of ET DNA within humans on this planet. Now, third density was created because the Patal were fighting a war with the Alpha Draconians. So third density was created so that they could evolve back up to 11th density and bring enlightenment to the Draconians. But it's believed that this didn't work. This was because of the Archons, who the Draconians work for, which is this type of AI. Now, this is the same AI that the Dracos have been using to control humanity and to dumb us down. The frequency that has been projected onto the world from the moon, this was used to control us by this AI. Now, we've been through 2 years of a pandemic, and a lot of people were sort of forced into having this. And this was going to be used against humanity. It was another form of control by this frequency coming from the moon. But it was dismantled by the Galactic Federation of Worlds in the Earth Alliance earlier this year. And this was confirmed by Elena Danaan. Now we all know that humanity has been controlled for thousands of years. Not just by the Dracos, but also by the Greys. More so over the past 100 years, alongside the deep state. And if the governments, the deep state, etc., have been manipulating the world for their own agendas, corruption, wealth, control, we have all been slaves to this. Now, this has been due to time trigger events, and these time triggers were set with the Greys of Dracos in the deep state, and they used trauma and fear to keep humanity on a negative timeline. And these timelines events are such things like wars, World War One, World War Two, even 9/11, in the latest one, actually the pandemic. Now, the deep state have used looking glass technology to look into these negative timelines to see how they play out and time these events exactly to create a negative timeline. Now, the Pleiadians are a fifth density race. They can see these timelines happening, and along with the time travel, these timelines are being infiltrated by the Galactic Federation of Worlds and the Earth Alliance, and also along with the White Hats, which expose the lies and the corruption, the trafficking of drugs and children and women. Not just for sex with the children, but also for the organs. And this has been within the governments and the deep state. This causes humanity to wake up because we start questioning things that are going on because of the cracks in the system at the minute. This raises humanity's consciousness. This has steered humanity onto one single timeline, which we are now on. Now, also, the Pleiadians, as well as the United States Navy, also using computers, quantum computers, to track these timelines. But we know that the Galactic Federation of Worlds are, the Pleiadians now are a quantum computer, but they were assisting to pinpoint these timelines. Now, the Federation of Worlds and the Earth Alliance fought off the Greys and the Dracos, and this war was going on for a while, but apparently they're not here anymore. They've been kicked off this planet, but there's still fighting going on the underground bases and in certain parts of the world because of the infiltration of the deep state, and they need to get the deep state out of there. And so this keeps us in a third density world, and that's what they were doing. Now, there's a guy on the internet who's a mathematician, a physicist, who's been doing these calculations through studying geometry of the universe, as well as studying Ashayana Dean's things. The Christus spiral is in a different proportion of the Fumanchu spiral, which goes by a different ratio. And he calculated a date for the collapse of third density. Now, the date is the 8th or the 9th of November, 2023. Now, this date has a couple of significance. At the minute, the US Senate is trying to get rid of the daylight saving time. Now, if this was done, this wouldn't actually take effect until November 2023. And also on the 8th of November 1923, Hitler tried to overthrow the German government. There was also a plot to kill Hitler in a pub back in November 1923. So that would be exactly 100 years, which is quite an unusual timeline. Now, information from Forehand by Elena Denan mentioned that 2023, all of this that is happening now, would be a distant memory. Forehand also told Elena that we had to build a star fleet on the moon very quickly due to there not being enough time as third density is going to collapse. We all know what's happening in the world right now, and over the past few years with all the lies and the threats of war and the propaganda, etc. So November 2023 sounds like a plausible time, as we know that the Earth is also going through changes as well as ascension into a higher air density, just the same as humanity is going through an ascension. People are waking up day by day, and their consciousness is rising, and one can't happen without the other. So the negative timeline can't exist anymore as we move into fifth density. Third density will collapse. Now, we all know that here in the UK, we're going through quite a bad time at the minute with the rise of everything. Now, I've got a little video here of Rishi Sunak. I'd like you to watch this and see what you think.
A good job and what's considered a good salary, but unfortunately the rising cost of everything, especially energy, have now put an intense strain on my ability to provide for my children. The significant increase in our energy bill has meant that we don't have the boiler on. The lights are always off unless absolutely necessary, and when it's cold we wear jumpers and coats, and sometimes you can see our breaths when we breathe. Now, despite working a full-time job, I'm having to find ways to bridge the gap. I've started cleaning houses, and I spend every evening riding a bike, delivering for Uber Eats. I've managed to cut my grocery shop down to just £15 a week for an adult and 2 children, and I often go without myself to make sure the kids get what they need in their fed. A £150 grant towards energy bills, which have risen by an average of £2,000 a year, just isn't going to cut it. I've just about been able to balance things up until this point, but I'm now facing paying out more each month than I'm making. What are you going to do to address the soaring cost of energy? And if you're not doing anything, please tell me what else you suggest I can be doing to help myself.
Well, Hazel, thanks for your question. And look, I can't imagine how difficult your job is, right? I've got 2 kids as well, and I, have, as I said, obviously my wife and other helped with us. So, enormous admiration for what you're doing, and it sounds like you're working your socks off to look after them. So, tribute to you.
No, that's a typical politician's response there. I've got 2 kids as well. But the thing is, he's got a billionaire wife. There was also this little video of Rishi Sunak. Watch this one as well.
You mentioned that, and you mentioned the pressure on Russia. It's been reported that you've got family links to Russia, that your wife apparently has a stake in the Indian IT consultancy firm Infosys. They operate in Moscow. They have an office there. They have a delivery office there. They've got a connection to the Alpha Bank in Moscow. Are you giving advice to others that you're not following in your own home?
That's not. I'm an elected politician, and I'm here to talk to you about what I'm responsible for. My wife is not.
She is not, but equally, if you as a country, we are asking taxpayers to fund the UK's support for Ukraine. We're asking people in the UK to give their homes up to Ukrainian refugees, whereas it appears your family potentially could be benefiting from Putin's regime.
No, I don't think that's the case. And as I said, the operations of all companies are up to them. We've put in place significant sanctions, and all the companies that we are responsible for are following those, as they rightly should, sending a very strong message to Putin's aggression.
Since the start of the Russian invasion, we've seen widespread commitments from firms and investors to end their involvement with Russian assets, or in other words, to divest. Companies such as BP, Shell, Aviva, M&G and Vanguard, to name but a few, have already announced their intention to reduce or sell holdings in Russia. I want to make it crystal clear that if firms or investors decide that they need to end their financial relationship with Russia, then the government fully supports you. And when I met leading businesses last week, I welcomed the consensus on the need to inflict maximum economic pain on Putin and his regime. Until recently, the UK companies held tens of billions of pounds of investments in Russian assets. While I recognise that it may be challenging to wind down existing investments, I believe there is no argument for new investment in the Russian economy. I am urging asset owners and managers to think very carefully about any investments that would in any sense support Putin and his regime. As the Prime Minister has said, diplomatically, politically, economically, and eventually militarily, this hideous and barbaric venture of Vladimir Putin must end in failure.
Now, Infosys, which is an IT company founded in Bangalore by this bloke, Anar Naramurthy, he doesn't run the company anymore, but still holds a large stake in it with a net worth of $3.4 billion. His daughter is also involved in the company with a 1% share in the company. Now, the company is worth $107 billion, so that makes her a billionaire. Now, this bloke's daughter is actually Rishi Sunak's wife. And the thing is, this company is still operating in Russia today. Now, many companies are diversing away from Russia, but Rishi's wife, company shares that make her a billionaire, is still operating. So that just goes to show you the lies and the corruption that goes on within the governments. They tell you one thing to do while they do another. It's a typical thing throughout the world. It's also the same that's happening in Ukraine. We all know that Russia has gone in there to take out the deep state. And the world governments are making them out to be some sort of Nazi and evil and things that, and it doesn't look like that's the case at all. Like I've said before in other videos, that it looks as a strategic operation. Now, Russia is now asking countries to pay in rubles. We knew a while back that Russia were going to use the gold standard for their money, which stops the deep state and the corruption and the laundering in Russia and other countries, are also preparing the gold standard as well. This is being put in place by the White Hats. This is just happening, like I said, all over the world. It's the same in America with Hunter Biden and his laptop. There's been talks that this laptop gives a lot of evidence of the corruption that's been going on in Ukraine and the money laundering that's been going on. Due to also not just by Hunter Biden, but also the payoffs that Biden has received in money from the Clinton Foundation and the links of Obama and Bush.
Assistant Director of FBI Cyber. I want to know where Hunter Biden's laptop is. Where is it?
Sir, I don't know that answer.
I mean, Hunter Biden's password on his laptop was Hunter02. He drops it off at a repair store. I'm holding the receipt from Max Computer Repair, where in December 2019, they turned over this laptop to the FBI. And what now you're telling me right here is that as the Assistant Director of FBI Cyber, you don't know where this is after it was turned over to you 3 years ago.
Yes, sir, that's an accurate statement.
There's also been on the media about talks about cutting off the gas supply from Russia and getting it from Saudi Arabia. Here's a news clip that was on Good Morning Britain.
Prime Minister, as we know, is now in the Middle East to try and urge Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates to step up oil production and sell it to us in a bid to reduce what he's called our addiction to Russian oil and gas.
But he's already been forced to defend Saudi's human rights record, saying he will raise concerns, this is just days, after 81 people were killed in the largest mass execution for decades. Well, Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary, joins us now. Very good morning to you.
Morning.
Are you not, as the Labour leader alleges, just skipping from one dictator to another to beg for resources?
What we've seen in Ukraine is the most appalling violation of a sovereign nation, the first war in European territory for years, and a shattering of European security that doesn't just threaten countries like the United Kingdom or allies across Europe, it threatens global security. So we do need to work with every possible country we can in stopping Vladimir Putin and ensuring he loses in Ukraine. And of course, we don't agree with every policy of Saudi Arabia or the United Emirates, but we are facing a huge challenge to global security. And we need to be realistic in finding alternative sources of oil and gas. And of course, the Gulf is a key source of that oil and gas, along with more homegrown production, along with more help from the likes of Japan and the United States.
Secretary, we are alleged to have double standards. Saudi is described as a brutal regime. We have that situation where 81 people executed in a single day. It is said that they do not have fair trials in Saudi Arabia, guilty of bombing civilians in Yemen. 10,000 children have been killed or injured in that military action by a Saudi-led coalition. They're implicated, of course, as you'll know, in the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. Amnesty International says Saudi oil buys the world's silence on the human rights abuse there. We have taken a very moral stance on Russia. Why does that collapse when it comes to Saudi?
Now, as you've seen from that video there, it just doesn't make sense. They're making Putin out to be this evil dictator and just invading Ukraine on the basis that he just wants it back, he wants the power, he wants it part of Russia again. When it's a known fact that Ukraine actually wasn't dissolved from Russia completely. It didn't put up any borders, and that is funded still by Russia. So Russia goes in and takes out the deep state. And here you have a politician on the news saying that they want to get gas and oil supplies from Saudi Arabia, who are doing much more heinous crimes against humanity to what Russia is doing at the minute in Ukraine. It just doesn't make sense. But this is all part of the structure of the deep state, the lies and the corruption that they tell you. Now, if you're wondering why I've shown all these videos, it's just to show you that as what consciousness is rising, and the third density is starting to collapse at the minute. It hasn't collapsed fully. It says that we're just in the bottom part of fourth density. In fourth density, the ascension starting into fourth density is mainly where all the corruption and the lies come out for humanity to see and to wake up. And that is exactly what's happening. You can see that in the videos. You can see it on the news at the minute. All the lies that are coming out from the governments. And it's all telltale signals that the white hats are in the background controlling all this for the lies to come out and for humanity to wake up. So with all this going on, and it will all come out eventually. So the collapse of third density does look inevitable. Now, whether the date is the 8th or the 9th of November 2023, I don't know. I've just given you an insight of what could be. All of this that I've played today and that I've said is for you just to listen to make your own opinions of, to think about for yourself, and to take your own sovereignty in your own consciousness to decide what's right and what's wrong and what we want as a human being in the world. Because to move up the fifth density, we have to take control of our own lives. We have to take control of this earth and get rid of the corruption and the control over humanity. I hope you found this video interesting. And remember, UK and the rest of the world, keep a level head, keep an open mind, and keep awakening to the truth.
Awakening to the truth.